Tonight is next. We'll be back at 6:30.
From ABC, this is a special one-hour edition of World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. Operation Desert Storm is now 24 hours old, and the White House says do not be lulled into thinking it will all be quick or easy. At this moment last night, Gary Shepard, ABC's Gary Shepard, was on the phone with us from Baghdad. The night sky, he was saying, was lighting up like 100 4th of Julys. Well, now we know why. 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles, more than 1,000 sorties by fighter planes from the U.S., Britain, France, and with the participation of Saudi Arabia and Kuwait as well. The Defense Secretary, Richard Cheney, says only one U.S. aircraft has been lost. The pilot, not yet identified, has been killed. The British say they lost one plane, apparently from engine trouble, and the Kuwaitis say that one of their planes was shot down as well. It is now the middle of the night in the Persian Gulf. There are actually reports from there at the moment that there has been renewed bombing on Baghdad this evening. The administration says there's going to be no let-up, no pause for peace. If Saddam Hussein wants to stop the fighting, says the White House, he must surrender. ABC's Bill Redeker is in eastern Saudi Arabia. We're going to begin tonight's broadcast with him taking us through the day based on the information he has been able to glean from military operations throughout the country. Bill?
More than 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from battleships in the Gulf slipped under Iraqi radar and passed their first battlefront test, knocking out anti-aircraft systems in Kuwait and Iraq. At the same time, Air Force Wild Weasels and other electronic warfare planes take to the air and jam Iraqi radar. The way was then clear for a surprise attack, and the Air Force, Army, Marines, and Navy launched every kind of fighter and bomber available, 617 planes in all.
See you in a few hours. I'll be here. Hit them hard. Yes, sir. We'll kick their ass. Okay.
Flight crews were visibly proud. The wing commander ignored Saudi sensitivities, hoisted the flag, turned on the spotlight. Computer programmed, the planes honed in on critical command and control facilities, Scud missiles aimed at Israel and air bases in Saudi Arabia, chemical and nuclear production plants. But a Scud alert at military bases, Riyadh and Dhahran, sent soldiers and civilians into bunkers and shelters where they scrambled to put on gas masks. Correspondent Jim Hickey at an airbase in the Gulf.
Military commanders fully expected an Iraqi retaliation on this airbase. In fact, during the night there were 2 air raid alerts. Iraqi missiles apparently were headed in this direction, but local officials said they fell short.
At dawn, only a few hours after the war began, the first fighters returned to Saudi Arabia to refuel, rearm.
Well, the biggest thing I saw was one of the most fantastic fireworks demonstrations I've seen since 4th of July party years and years and years ago. This was tremendous. Baghdad was lit up like a Christmas tree.
The Iraqi Air Force got only a few planes into the air. Most of them fled north. But one was shot down by Captain Steve Tate, who scored the first direct hit, though he had never before fired a missile at night.
So I just let one Fox 1 go, and about 4 miles in front of me get a huge fireball. Actually I get the missile coming off, which is a big flash coming off, get a huge fireball, and the airplane blows up. When the airplane blows in a big, huge fireball, pieces get scattered everywhere.
Vorontsov criticized the intransigence of the Iraqis, saying that the Soviets...
In the desert, Army and Marine ground forces took the day off, listened to news reports about the air campaign, and put aside their inter-service rivalries because their jobs may now be easier.
It's about time. We're glad.
Just knowing that we're finally doing what our job is, what our mission is, feels good to know that we're actually doing something.
But the land battle, if it is fought, will be more difficult, and Marines near the front know it.
People's listening to the news and getting basically a false sense of security, and you know that we've destroyed this and that, and I strongly emphasize people not to basically listen to what the news and take it too hard. You know what I'm saying?
You're saying the fight's not over yet?
No, it's not. It's just beginning.
Tonight, more cruise missile attacks launched from U.S. warships in the Gulf, and no let-up in the round-the-clock massive air campaign being waged by American warplanes. And Peter, I should point out to you, we've just been handed an updated bulletin from one of the pool crews. Marine Corps helicopters and jet fighters attacked Iraqi ground forces inside Kuwait early Monday after Marine ground troops came under artillery fire by the Iraqis near the town of Khafji, which is on the border between Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. No U.S. casualties are reported, though a Marine officer here tells ABC News that he believes 2 may have been injured. So the ground war, or at least that component of it, has begun. Help me a little bit with time frame, Bill, because you said early Monday. Do you mean early tomorrow morning your time? It's now the middle of the night there, or do you mean early today? I'm sorry, I meant early Thursday, and it apparently occurred at about 5 o'clock in the morning our time. Okay, so that would suggest to us that there has been ground activity with the Marines from the very early stage of the campaign, correct? That's what it seems to imply, that they came under attack in that border town. That's the same town where the oil refinery was hit by artillery fire late last night, our time. That's Khafji on the border across for which many Kuwaitis flee. One other question, Bill, just before we lose you now. A lot of people refer to waves of bombing as if people go and then stop and then go and then stop. But in fact, it sounds every time we come to you as if it's fairly constant behind you, these takeoffs and landings. We hear them taking off and see them taking off every hour on the hour. But this is only one base. There are several bases scattered throughout this country and in the Gulf region, and they're taking off from those bases at other intervals. So it really isn't a wave, it's a constant aerial assault. Okay, Bill Redeker in eastern Saudi Arabia, thank you very much. Our knowledge of what Baghdad looks like today is very limited. You heard one of the pilots there say it looked like a 4th of July, but television journalists in Baghdad have not been able to transmit any pictures, and in many cases may have been prevented from taking them. Most of what we know comes from talking on the phone with reporters. ABC's Gary Shepard for one, Nathan Thomas of ABC and another, and the British journalist Brent Sadler, who managed to tour some of Baghdad today after the first bombing. He was in a taxi.
The sky lit up with an incredible amount of anti-aircraft fire, tracer bullets rising up from the ground, going off in all directions, perhaps hundreds of thousands of rounds during the air attack, which lasted for about 3.5 hours.
We hear the sound of explosions. We feel sometimes the concussion of explosions.
Occasionally we saw explosions that looked like they could have been within the city of Baghdad. However, most of what we saw were bursts of light off beyond the horizon.
I think people are still in a state of shock and disbelief. I have seen what appears to be new anti-aircraft missile launchers being put into position on overpasses over main roads, and one of course can see soldiers as part of the air defense batteries here with SAM-7 missiles on their shoulders, and clearly the expectation is that there will be another attack sometime tonight.
The U.S. Air Force had wanted to knock Iraqi television off the air so that Saddam Hussein could not communicate with his people. But today, Iraqi television showed pictures of Saddam Hussein in the streets, allegedly taken today. The streets are very empty. They also showed Saddam praying and then speaking defiantly to the nation. God is with us, he said. The will of Satan and evil in the White House will be defeated. Victory will be with us with the help of God. And of course, with the first American attacks on Baghdad, people began to flee the capital as best they could. It's been very difficult for Iraqis, as far as we can tell, to get out of the country. Nobody's been given an exit visa. But here's the sign at the Iraqi-Jordanian border, as many people, including Jordanians, tried to get out. Listen to this man. What he's saying is there's fire, kulu, all over Baghdad, fire. The children, he says, were sleeping when the attack first came. Kulu, all over Baghdad, he said. One traveler from Baghdad early today, recorded by our cameras, giving some indication of exactly what it was like over Baghdad for part of last night. Long before the fighting began, the Pentagon had made it clear it would limit the flow of information. And in this first 24 hours, the information has been even more limited than the Pentagon had promised, which means that the public, not to mention the media, are talking about the war based on official information that is now more than 10 hours old. Bearing that in mind, here's our Pentagon correspondent, Bob Zelnick.
Pentagon officials say air attacks by the U.S. and its allies have severely damaged Iraq's ability to wage war. Their battle damage assessments are based on the accounts of returning pilots, satellite and reconnaissance photos, and electronic devices which can test whether radar and communications are still functioning. Pentagon officials privately say cluster bombs and cruise missiles have rendered 80% of Iraq's combat aircraft useless, either because the planes themselves have been disabled or their runways torn up. In addition, officials here say that command and control facilities have been hit hard enough to hinder communications between senior commanders and troops in the field. Chemical weapons plants have been damaged to the point where Iraq may have lost the ability to manufacture new deadly agents. However, Pentagon officials still believe that there are chemical weapons at the front. Nuclear facilities have also suffered heavy damage. Military analysts point to a number of reasons why the initial Allied attacks worked so well. U.S. strategists had spent months in the area, acquiring information about Iraqi defense systems and devising a coordinated plan for attacking them. U.S. aircraft succeeded in jamming Iraq's early detection systems. The Tomahawk cruise missiles succeeded in knocking out many radar and air defense facilities. And stealth fighters succeeded in evading Iraqi radar to hit their targets. In addition, B-52 bombers, A-10 attack planes, and Apache helicopters hit Iraqi troops and tanks in Kuwait and southern Iraq, including the Republican Guards. That was to prevent the Iraqis from counterattacking and drawing the U.S. into a ground war before it was ready. On day one of the war, modern U.S. planes completely overwhelmed more primitive Iraqi defenses. Officials here warn that Iraq's ground forces, with their modern Soviet tanks and artillery, could be a much tougher foe. Bob Zelnick, ABC News at the Pentagon.
Yes, indeed, a lot of warnings about the war of attrition. At the White House today, a new message. Now that the war has started, the ground rules have changed. Here's our White House correspondent, Brit Hume.
By the time the president met congressional leaders this morning, elation at the first night's low casualties and limited enemy resistance had given way to a nervous feeling that perhaps, as one official said, it was all too easy. The president was asked if he's concerned about overconfidence.
No, I'm not concerned. There is no unwarranted optimism, and there will be none.
The president told the leaders there's a lot of prayer going on at the White House, and Mr. Bush, accompanied by the evangelist Billy Graham, who had spent the night here, attended a brief service at a military base just outside Washington. As Mr. Bush and his aides have conferred and consulted allies in the past 2 days, they have worried about more than just a military operation. They're also concerned that Saddam Hussein may yet attempt some gambit, a call for a ceasefire in talks, for instance, that could divide the U.S. from its allies. Press Secretary Fitzwater seemed to be trying to head that off when he said today there'll be no pause in the war. All Saddam needs to do to stop it, he said, quote, is surrender and comply with the UN resolutions. The word surrender raised the issue of whether Mr. Bush had changed his goals, which the president later, in effect, denied.
I don't want to get caught up in some semantics about all of this. He's got to get out of Kuwait. And he's got to do it with no concessions or no condition.
Meanwhile, a political skirmish broke out over a proposed congressional resolution of support for U.S. forces.
We will join in full support of the men and women of our armed forces who are displaying such courage and skill.
But Mitchell did not mention the president, nor did a proposed resolution his office brought forth this afternoon. Outraged Republicans demanded that be changed. It was a reminder that in this town, even at this time, politics is a factor in everything. Peter?
Brit Hume at the White House, thank you very much. The complications of being against the policy, but for the troops in the Persian Gulf, which will play itself out over days. Standing by at the State Department now is our national security correspondent, John McWethy. John, first question, as you look around the world today, and we have some reports from overseas, how do you judge the political posture of people? How are they responding overall?
Overwhelmingly, Peter, the response has been positive and supportive for what the United States has done. There have been a few countries that have been critical, but those are not countries that are unexpectedly so. North Korea, Cuba. So I think the Bush administration is probably delighted with the support it's gotten so far.
And what do you think the posture is going to be in terms of trying to bring this to an end? Will it only be, as Brit Hume suggests, the president suggests, outright surrender?
Well, I think it could be something less than that, but clearly the State Department today was trying to signal that while yesterday it said the door was still open for some sort of offer from Saddam Hussein, today the door is not open. And Margaret Tutwiler, the spokesperson here at the State Department, said the rules have changed. Now the Iraqis are going to have to get out. They are going to have to make it very clear, unconditionally, that they will pull out, and there has to be evidence they're doing so massively.
Okay, John McCarthy at the State Department, thank you very much. Another indication that though we are advised to guard against euphoria, the political establishment in Washington is feeling pretty good about the way the campaign is going. Let's go overseas now to the Middle East. In Jordan today, where there is a good deal of sympathy for Saddam Hussein, there were no street demonstrations and there was very little public reaction at all, which is a surprise to many people. ABC's John Donovan is in Amman.
No one marched in Amman today, no one chanted, no one raised a fist. The city, mostly shuttered downtown, took in the news and stayed quiet. Quiet, but bitter.
American. What are you doing here? What do you do in here? Kuwait Arab, Palestinian Arab, and what do you do?
How is the reputation of Saddam today in Jordan?
Well, we love him to death, you know. He's the man that he's gonna, you know, fight against our enemies.
But for some, those words, like the posters hung long before the shooting started, will have the flavor of leftovers. So many Arabs had rallied around Saddam Hussein as the answer to all their problems with the West.
This is a man who could deliver. This was the image of Saddam Hussein. And obviously the man has proven totally incapable of delivering.
Tonight, Jordanian television compared the U.S. attack on Iraq to the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, while newspapers went to press, continuing to criticize American actions. Since the crisis began, Jordan has insisted on a peaceful solution. But tonight, there are people in this city who would like the fighting to continue, but only if it meant Saddam Hussein could score hits against the U.S. John Donovan, ABC News, Amman.
In a moment, a desert storm and the markets. The stock prices are up, the oil prices are down. Rage, resignation, protest, and prayer are some of the emotions we find in the country. We'll have a report about teaching children about the war and an encounter with one father and his pride in his son's achievements.
Hey, gorgeous.
Oh, come on.
Ounce for ounce, can you mix a bowl of cereal with more vitamin and mineral nutrition than Total?
Sure I can. There. And then we'll have some of this.
Not enough calcium.
Okay, wait a minute. I'll add some of this one.
Now there's not enough iron.
Hey, you're interrupting me.
You know, a bowl of all those put together can't top an equal amount of Total. One serving of whole grain Total has 100% of 12 essential vitamins and minerals. For all this nutrition, nothing can top Total. Nothing.
You're kidding.
What do doctors recommend most for the aches and pains of colds and flu? Not aspirin, not anymore. Doctors now recommend Tylenol, 6 times more than aspirin for colds and flu. Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most.
If one antacid was recommended most by doctors, if it was recommended most by pharmacists, and if it was trusted by hospitals as well, it could only be Mylanta, the antacid doctors recommend most.
Now let's deal with the impact of war on the economy. When President Bush met with his economic advisors earlier this week, they told him that if the war is short, it should clear the way for an economic recovery, or at the very least it could, whereas a long war could do serious damage. Today, with the early good news, the world's financial markets literally took off. Here's ABC's Bob Jameson.
The opening of the New York Stock Exchange began with a moment of silence for American forces. And then a cheer from eager traders who bid the stock market to its second biggest gain ever. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up more than 114 points at 2623.51. Investors who had pulled out of the market because of the uncertainty over war returned with a vengeance in New York and other world markets.
Never before have you had such a potentially catastrophic event advertised so far in advance. So every rational investor has had an opportunity to prepare for it.
On the oil markets, prices plunged in London below $20 a barrel for the first time since Iraq invaded Kuwait. And in New York, the price of oil fell more than $10, the biggest one-day decline ever. Gasoline prices at the pump also began falling. While the United States and other countries tapped their strategic oil reserves to guarantee supply, experts cautioned that today's price declines were based only on emotion.
Well, I expect prices will continue to be volatile. We certainly have seen some of the most volatile prices that I can ever remember.
Analysts also cautioned that the markets can misjudge events like the 1973 Middle East War. Then stock prices rose for a week, only to decline for a year after the Arab oil embargo. Bob Jamieson, ABC News, New York.
Beyond the marketplace today, the reaction in the country to the outbreak of the war was somber, reflective. There were so many expressions of caring for the soldiers assigned to the Gulf and continuing objection by many to the fact that they had been sent to fight. With something of a roundup, here's ABC's Ken Kashiwahara.
Americans woke up to the reality of war today.
American and Allied warplanes continue to hit targets in Kuwait and Iraq.
At a Seattle radio station, some callers were concerned.
I'm sort of scared.
Yeah? Others were pleased.
One of our favorite little phrases was, butts kicked upon request, and it seems to me like he spent 6 months requesting it, so I suppose it's time to go in there and do the job.
Commuters found the images of war inescapable and consuming. From California to New York, there were mixed emotions.
Well, I stand behind what Bush is doing, but I can't help feeling sick to my stomach when I hear about the first casualty we had today.
I feel a sense of pride, but I also feel a sense of great sorrow. It's a very emotional thing.
For some, the reality of war was a time to reflect, to light a candle, to pray.
Basically to thank God that things are going well.
We were praying for peace, that there wouldn't be a war. Now we're praying for a short war at least.
For others, it was a time to protest in Boston, in St. Louis, in San Francisco. Many Americans responded to calls for help for blood donors, blood which is being sent to the Persian Gulf in case it's needed.
This is the first time in my life I've ever given blood. That's how seriously I believe in it.
Throughout the day, interest in Persian Gulf developments remained intense. At a normally noisy restaurant in Atlanta, many supported what their country had done.
I think it's great. I mean, it's time that we took action.
But a few were sad.
I just think it's senseless, and there should be another way to deal with the issue other than war.
For all Americans, the waiting has ended. But for many, the uncertainty of war has been replaced by the uncertainty of when it will end. Ken Kashiwahara, ABC News, Los Angeles.
If you're an adult, and like some of the people in Ken's report, you are depressed by the outbreak of war today, give some thought to how confusing all this must be to children. Psychiatrists say it's very important for parents and teachers to reassure young children, which is why in a great many classrooms today, the war is an overwhelming topic of conversation. ABC's Chris Bury is in Chicago.
The students of Ogden Elementary are living through their first American war. To them, Vietnam is history. But the war against Iraq is in living color, and today it came to their classrooms.
The situation has changed drastically.
In social studies, these 8th graders were encouraged to share their thoughts about the war. Teachers hoped it would help ease anxiety.
I hear that people were reporting from Baghdad last night, and you hear the bombs in the background. And I just get so scared, it just sends chills through me.
I'm just wondering how many innocent people, maybe people my own age, might end up dying because of it.
I don't want war. It's really hard.
It is even harder on students with family members at war. The school plans special counseling for them.
I have a brother in the Red Sea on the USS Saratoga, and I'm really worried for him.
For younger students, war is more abstract, teachers say. 3rd graders may have no idea where Iraq is, but they still share some basic concerns.
I'm happy that it's not going to be here. I don't want anybody to die.
Educators say the war with Iraq will leave a lasting mark on their students.
They are seeing tapes for the first time in their young lives on television of stealth bombers actually blitzing Baghdad. They know for the first time that war is real.
For the school children at Ogden Elementary, no longer is war just a history lesson. Chris Bury, ABC News, Chicago.
Speaking of parents and children, earlier today, during our continuing coverage of the war in the Gulf, we were able to connect a father and a son, a father in Boston and a son in Saudi Arabia, a pilot who had just returned from combat.
I'm determinant for one very small portion of the overall force. My particular flight and package we're escorting, and as long as we don't see anybody or anybody we do see runs away, That's control of the skies. If you want to talk about domination of the skies of Iraq as in a macro sense, that's not something I can judge. I can tell you that where we went today, nobody showed up to challenge us. So that fits my definition, but it's in a very small perspective.
In Boston, Michael Hostage Sr. Have you seen that before, sir?
No, sir, I have not.
Well, I guess I want to know your first reaction. You must be very glad to see your son safe.
It's a great relief, and I'm full of pride.
And as you listen to him, obviously, we can't get a clue to his psyche because we don't know him, but you do.
Well, he's a very calm young man.
Calmer than his father, by the sounds of it.
Yes, calmer than his father at the moment.
Yes.
Very calm, almost laconic, as is the prototypical fighter pilot. He's an aggressive young man, very thoughtful, very good at his job.
Tell me, sir, if you wouldn't mind, intrude on your privacy a little, how it has been for you and your family and friends to think about and watch the first 18 and a half hours of this campaign unfold?
Well, obviously, it's been a very emotional experience. My wife and I are both filled with a mixture of fear and worry and pride. I would say that as between us, on my part, the pride is ahead of the fear, and perhaps on my wife's part, the fear is a little ahead of the pride. But, of course, that's just a result of the fact that no matter how big he gets, he's always his mother's little boy.
We'll have more news in just a moment.
People like you are determined to win. You don't settle for being second best. Neither do we. We're Century 21. And if you want to make the most of your future, talk to us during Career Opportunity Week. We're the largest real estate sales organization in the world. So if you want to be among the best at Century 21, it's as good as done.
I get this awful sinus pain, crushing, pounding. It's agony.
Are you still taking any of these sinus pain formulas? They all made news in the 80s. Surprisingly, they all have the same medicine. Today's news is Dristan Sinus. Only Dristan Sinus combines the leading decongestant with the modern pain reliever ibuprofen.
I found it relieves my sinus pain wherever it strikes, and no drowsiness.
So if you're taking the same medicine that made news in the 80s, get new Dristan Sinus, today's sinus medicine.
How do I know where to get my brakes done right?
Come to Midas. You get a lot of value for the price, plus peace of mind, knowing the job will be done right.
That's why more people come to us for brakes, knowing that nobody beats Midas. Nobody.
GasX asks, which food gives you more gas pain? The burger? The healthier you eat, the more you may need GasX for fast gas pain relief. Relief antacids can't give you. So eat right and feel right with GasX.
So here we are at the end of 24 hours since the military operation against Iraq and occupied Kuwait began, and it continues around the clock. President Bush says there's not going to be anything except a surrender from Saddam Hussein, and at this hour, it is the middle of the night in occupied Kuwait and Baghdad. The U.S. Air Force is up in the skies again, wreaking as much havoc it can with the Iraqi military. We will be back in a couple of minutes with the second half of our expanded version of World News tonight, and during that segment we'll talk to two of the country's leading military analysts and see what is on their mind.
The president says the attacks will continue until Kuwait is liberated. Monitoring the world 24 hours a day. Stay with the experience of ABC
What'd you say?
News.
Call 259-WKRN for updates on the Gulf War.
In many ways, agriculture in Tennessee is about the same as it's always been. Cows still nurse their calves. The fields are still green. And the people still greet you with a wave and a smile. But don't let all this fool you. Things aren't the same. Today's farmer must be as much a business manager as a tiller of the soil. For confidential business management assistance, call the Manage Information Line or contact your County Agricultural Extension Service office.
Hello, Mr. Gerard.
I need to see Sheriff Truman.
Are you here to sell him some more shoes?
Much more important, it's the official